Hello, and welcome to the Physical Therapy Owners Club podcast. I'm your host, Nathan Shields. And today I've got a frequent flyer. He's been on a number of times, maybe a little while, but I've got Stephen Rapposelli, physical therapist from the great state of
Delaware.
Delaware is representing on the podcast today. Stephen, hey, thanks for joining me again, man.
This is excellent. Now, I want to preface this podcast by letting your listeners know ahead of time, Nathan has no idea what I'm going to do. This is a huge experiment in the podcasting world where the podcaster does not know what's going to happen, and we're just going to see how it goes.
This is true. You know, Stephen is kind of catching me off guard. He says he's got topics in mind, but he has not shared with me those topics that he would like to discuss. So
I'll read them off to you if you're ready.
Okay. When you're ready, I'm going to essentially turn over the podcast to you at this point and let it fly. This is Stephen's podcast at this point.
You're safe.
Okay.
Now, this is really a mishmash of different topics, but I think they're all timely. And, this is going to be an interesting conversation.
Cool.
Number one.
All right.
Why I like your podcast.
Okay.
Number two, mastermind groups.
Yes.
Number three, being a better CEO.
Mm-hmm.
Number four, future of orthopedic outpatient physical therapy.
Mm-hmm.
Number five, special added bonus for your listeners, some recent books that they would like to read probably.
Oh.
All right?
Yeah.
So with that said,
I love it.
and listeners, Nathan has no idea what I'm about to say.
I don't.
And I'm watching your reaction very intently. But I really like your podcast, and I got no dog in this game. I can assure you, I listen to every one of your episodes.
Really?
Because I find them valuable.
Thank you.
And I'm going to tell you why I find them valuable. You know, first of all, you have no idea where this podcast is going to go, and you're okay with that. How cool is that? So you're a guy who's pretty comfortable in being flexible, adaptable, and just letting your guests kind of go where they want to go, if that's where they're going to go.
Yeah, as long as they're presenting value, let's go.
Oh, absolutely. And a lot of podcasters don't do that. Number two, you have great guests. I really have enjoyed just about every one of your guests. You really curate a wonderful set of people. Of course, me being top of the list, but in general, your guests are great. It's a good mix of theory as well as tactics. So as a CEO, there's times when you want to get down into philosophical ideas, and that's wonderful. There's a place for that. And then there's times where you just want some tactics. Mm-hmm. And I've seen a really good mix in your podcast of both.
Cool.
Finally, I think these podcasts with your guests are in general conversational. Mm-hmm. And that is really entertaining because there's a lot of things that are vying for our attention as CEOs. A lot of things are vying for our attention. And if it doesn't have an element of entertainment, you're going to lose people.
Oh, for sure.
Consistently, week after week, and it continues to get better, you have good conversations with people. So hats off to you. I hope you feel good. Now let's see if we can knock you off your perch a little bit.
Yeah, let's throw some mud on this.
Masterminds. It seems like everyone's in one. It seems like they're everywhere. Nathan, what is the purpose of Mastermind? I asked you because you have one.
Mm-hmm. I've got two now.
Okay.
So the purpose of the Mastermind, and so the Mastermind concept, I think, is essentially an eternal concept. You look at ancient civilizations, go back to the Knights of the Round Table. That was a mastermind, right? Go back into the Bible. They had, you could call the apostles a mastermind group, right? You name it. I think masterminds have been around forever. I think that coining the term mastermind, if I'm not mistaken, was done by Napoleon Hill in Think and Grow Rich.
Correct.
Right? And I kind of lean towards his definition. That is just a gathering of individuals who are together to help each other overcome, learn, explore, and become better, where 1 + 1 = 3, right? And so the accumulation of minds is gathered to affect and improve a single individual. And so that's the purpose of the mastermind.
Compare and contrast mastermind with coaching.
Yeah. So the mastermind, at least in my mastermind, I'm going to be the moderator per se, right? I'm not necessarily taking a turn in the conversations, but each person gets their time to talk about their issue, their concern, you name it, and where they want help. And I'm going to moderate and say, well, I think Joe over here might be able to speak to that, or, let's each take our turn, take your turns, and maybe, and then I can elaborate from a place of experience as well. And so the mastermind is going to be a lot of different varying inputs into one individual's issue. Whereas the coaching is going to be singular input, singular experience, based on experience with more guidance, I would say, right? You could see a mastermind coming together sometimes as a brainstorm, sometimes as multiple experience shares, where coaching is going to be one-on-one individually. And it's going to come from, okay, this is where I'm seeing a weakness and this is what I need you to do next. Just like a coach would do, right? And say on a basketball team or a personal trainer, you have a weakness here. We need to strengthen that. Go off and do those exercises. And when we come back, I'm going to hold you accountable. If a mastermind's working well, then they will hold each other accountable, but that can be difficult at times.
Is there a place in the CEO's world for both a coach and a mastermind group?
Oh, for sure. Oh, I think there has to be. I haven't referred to it much recently as I'm looking over the past year of podcast episodes, but my mantra of reach out, step out, and network, the formula for a successful owner in PT practices is number one is to reach out and get some training, and that could be a coach or consultant. Stepping out of full-time patient care, but 3 is to network. And networking, if you're really going to get a lot out of your network, you need to be communicating with them on a regular basis. And we just don't naturally do that. And so that's where the mastermind is another word for networking in my mantra.
You have 2 mastermind groups. Why do you have 2?
Simply, I had a group of 5 guys, and I had another 3 that wanted to join a mastermind. And I thought it might be a good time to split up and have 4 and 4. So now I have 2 groups, and that makes it easy. Honestly, we'll spend with that group of 4 plus me, we'll spend a couple hours a month talking about issues.
Yep. Is being in more than one okay in your mind?
More than one mastermind?
Yeah.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I see no harm in that. I'm coming from a place where I've had multiple coaches over years. I've been a part of multiple masterminds. I'm doing these masterminds, through the Physical Therapy Owners Club. I'm also part of one of the peer-to-peer masterminds where I'm not a moderator, I'm just a member of the group. I also have a local mastermind here with some friends where we talk more about personal stuff and not necessarily business related stuff. So I'm personally in 4 masterminds at the moment.
Well, that last statement is a perfect segue to my next question for you, Nathan, which is, what are the pros and cons of a PT versus a non-PT mastermind group? What is the value of all PTs forming a mastermind versus non-PTs and you participating in that mastermind group?
Well, of course, the PT mastermind is the conversations we're going to have are specific to business. We don't delve into personal issues much. Sometimes we can if that's affecting our business. And I've been a part of business masterminds that have spoken to both, depending on where the owner is. So, if they're going through a divorce, hey, we're not talking during his segment about his or her segment about his business. We're talking about their divorce. So my focus, of course, with the Physical Therapy Owners Club is the PT specific business related issues and anything else that might be affecting the business outside of that. Whereas the non-PT related one, honestly, there's a little bit less format to it. It's a little bit more free flowing. We do have one guy who essentially leads, but we we come together as far as what we're going to learn together, the books we're going to read, issues that we're dealing with. Sometimes in that situation, one or two people might dominate a little bit more of the conversation than the others. Whereas in a little bit more, in the PT format, I try to keep it a little bit more strict.
I think you might agree with me, Nathan, that in general, us PTs, we are some weird people as business owners.
That's true.
And sometimes we're our own worst enemy. And when we talk business with non-PT business owners, you could be shocked. And you can be shocked at the response of other non-PT business owners at how we think. You probably have experienced, a non-PT business owner saying to you, "Are you out of your mind?"
Yeah.
About certain things, and that's you have to come in with a little bit of humility and openness to be able to think differently, because we really are, whether it's by our genetic blueprint or our training, that we see the world a certain way that not everybody else does.
Mm-hmm. And usually the reactions I received in those situations was, why are you guys doing it that way? We just have been brought up in this industry where we just accept some things as truth. And then when you talk to other owners outside of PT and they say, well, do you have to do it that way? My only response was like, well, that's just how we've always done it.
That's right.
And not necessarily that it's right. You know what I mean?
And that's part of opening your mind up, which is extraordinarily scary, yet important as you continue to grow as a person, both personally and professionally, I think.
Yeah, I think that's why it's really good to be part of networks that are not PT specific.
Absolutely.
Find some more generalized small business networking groups. Like our first networking group that Will and I joined was Entrepreneurs Organization, which is a national organization of small business owners. And that's the group I'm talking about. I'd have an electrician, I'd have a website designer, I'd have a graphic designer, I'd have a dentist in my group. And so we'd share these issues, and that's where I'd get the kickbacks. Sometimes I'd get some bright ideas and that from their industries that could be applicable to mine, and you name it.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Really opens up your perspective and your mind a little bit.
Well, I recently came back from a peer-to-peer conference in Alexandria, Virginia, and I love my peer-to-peer network. These are PT owners who get together, a subset of private practice section, and a more concentrated experience. And it's a great mastermind group. And I tried to think about what made it great. And as a group, we meet every week.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That's often.
Yes, that is. And it's a commitment. And then I thought I knew these people because we meet every week, and I do. But then we went to the conference, and we had 2.5, 3 days together in a room.
Yeah.
And it was like an exponential jump in value. And the reason I say that, and I want to share with your listeners, is you need to make the commitment to get to a level of trust that only comes with sharing a portion of yourself. Rudyard Kipling tells us that is the only true gift, a portion of yourself. And I think that we are called to lay ourselves out, and there's very few opportunities for a business owner to get the kind of feedback that is necessary to make them better. Because guess what? Nobody in your organization is going to give you that. They're not, because the dynamic is different. So if you can get to a level of trust and allow yourself to have that 360-degree feedback where people really, really get to know you and understand what makes you tick, that is, I think, gold. That's mastermind group gold right there.
I totally agree. The hardest thing to do in the mastermind, and that can be difficult, is to be vulnerable, and also to come in with some humility. And maybe it's a gendered thing. When you have a number of male owners, we guard our weaknesses, we cover them, or we put forth our best foot in order to hide the weaker foot, if I can use that. And so, and I say that simply because I haven't had any females in my mastermind groups up until this point. But I can see that as a stumbling block for those who get the most. In order to get the most out of the mastermind, you have to be more vulnerable. You have to ask more questions, and that comes from a place of humility and not knowing and understanding that I don't know, I don't have all the answers. It's the only way you can really get a lot out of it.
And I think diving a little bit deeper than that, and I'm going to reference Patrick Lencioni's book, The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team, is you have to have a level of trust.
Yeah.
If there's no trust, you won't feel safe in being vulnerable. And even that word vulnerable can make some of your listeners, kind of tense up a little bit. You're like, oh, here we go. But that's where the good stuff is. That's where you need to go as a business owner to improve yourself, I think. And that's what a mastermind group, when done well, does it. And it only comes from you making that emotional deposit into that group.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think from the surface, or maybe at the beginning of the experience, the mastermind experience, all the attendees come into it thinking, "What can I get out of it?" And I think if you go into it with that mentality, you're not going to get a lot out of it. I like to make it analogous to a potluck dinner. If everyone comes to the dinner thinking, "What am I going to eat?" then there's not going to be anything to eat. Everyone has to bring something to the table in order for all to benefit. And so you have to kind of flip that mindset from people who are thinking about the mastermind and what they can get out of it. You will get more out of it the more you put into it. And so
Nathan,
it's a mindset I have to get people to change.
Your nickname is now Alexa to me, because I suspect that you've been listening, to me as I'm writing stuff down, because I literally wrote down your third thing, which is network, right? Network with a purpose, which means you go into it giving. You don't go into it getting. And it's when you give, that's when the getting comes back to you automatically and in abundance. Right? What can you give? And that's key.
I agree.
So let's keep going forward into topic number 3, which is how to become a better CEO. If you and your listeners are interested in becoming a better CEO, I have a couple tips. Hopefully. Number 1, you got to eat the frog. Now, that's the concept that comes from Brian Tracy, who says, do that least palatable thing first thing in the day. Eat that. Nobody wants to eat the frog. If you wait till the end of the day to eat that frog ain't gonna get eaten. Eat the frog first thing. Mm-hmm. And you and I both know that there are things in our lives where we just would prefer not to do it. And we can come up with all kinds of ways to delay that inevitable. There's things that you don't want to do.
Oh, yeah.
And honestly, the thing that you don't want to do is the thing that you must do.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
As Ryan Holiday would say, the obstacle is the way. Mm-hmm. Another great book.
Yeah, one of my coaches said something similar. I'll never forget. He said, if it looks like death, run to it. And I can say from a coaching perspective and from my own lived experience, the one common thing that is the dread of most owners, and maybe this isn't just a PT related, it's probably a small business thing. And there's a reason why E-Myth Revisited was written. It was because owners don't want to write down the policy and procedures and put systems in place. It's just not right. And that many times in my coaching scenario, I can get them to the point, but at some point the owner has to sit down and write, or, according to McAllowitz, even videotape it. Something has to be done in order to put systems and policies and procedures in place for everything that's done in the clinic. It takes time, and it's laborious, and it's no fun, and there's no immediate reward, and no one's going to pay you for it. You name it. But that's one of those eat the frog things that just has to happen.
That's been one of my annual goals for decades.
Right?
Right. Absolutely. And it's the most unsexy thing you're going to do as a CEO, but it's probably one of the most valuable.
Yeah. It's the only way.
Podcast on that. And I think some of your previous guests have had wonderful tips about doing it.
It's the only way you can replicate yourself. I mean, you get to that point in your business growth cycle where you move from mom and pop organization, where you're not only checking people out at the register and stacking inventory and purchasing all the materials for your store, if you will, to going to an enterprise where other people are doing it for you, and there's a level of expectation that needs to be met. And in order for that to run well and be successful, they need to follow systems and procedures. It's a tough part.
Oh, absolutely. You're spitting out gold right now. Here's a controversial statement, and I don't know where you fall in the spectrum, but I've come to the conclusion that I'm either reading too much or I'm reading not enough. It's one of those two. You know, in 2015, I started my personal development journey, and I said, you know what, I'm going to try to read one book a month. Just on, getting my life in order and my head straight.
Sure.
Well, that year I wound up reading an average of one book a week.
Oh my gosh.
I read 54 books that week. I mean, that year, a tremendous amount. And some of them were great. And I kept going for a while. And, I have a stack of books right next to me. Two of them I'm going to recommend to you. But I think a lot of us can get caught up in that. I can't get enough. I have to get that next book that's going to give me that 0.25% edge that I think I'm looking for. Versus going back to that original 53 books and just reread the great ones over and over again and get that down pat. Like, for example, every year I read the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People.
Oh, good.
You can't read that enough. You really can't. It'll take you your lifetime to implement just the concepts in that book. And I can give you a dozen other ones, at least that are just as profound. I think we need to be careful that the next best thing isn't necessarily around the corner. Mm-hmm. It isn't necessarily in that next book that somebody recommends, although I'm about to recommend keep on. I think, and I think that we all kind of, we kind of have that schizophrenic, or maybe it's bipolar thing of I'm either reading too much or I'm not reading. Do you ever get that feeling?
Yeah. I listened to a podcast about a year and a half ago, maybe. Really smart guy, of course, right? And he said, I'm not impressed anymore with the number of books that people read. I'd rather, in an ideal world, I'd rather recognize someone for the few books that were read and fully implemented. So, if I were to turn the tables on you, Stephen, of those 54 books, how many did you implement at least 54 concepts that year into your business? Right. And so if someone were to read, say, one that's, chock full of stuff that you could implement, say Traction, right? By Gene Wickman.
One of my favorites.
Right. I know plenty of people that have read it, but when I go back and say, hey, have you considered an organizational chart for your organization? And like, what is the structure of your business? They're like, I don't know what you're talking about. Okay, let's go back to page 96 of Traction, which I know you read. And he gives you some examples of organizational charts. A business owner could read Traction and take a full year to implement all that stuff. And maybe it wouldn't take a year, but you know what I mean, right?
Or it will take more than a year.
Yeah. What was the Mike Michalowicz one? Clockwork, right? Where he talked about making videos, and the whole concept behind the book is to get to a 4-week vacation, right? Where you have no connection to the business. And at the end, he gives you a guide book or a guidelines for what you need to do at month 18, 16, 12, 8, as you're getting closer and closer to your vacation. I mean, if you really took the concepts of that and implemented them, that's the only book you really need to read during the year, business-wise, right? You focus on some of those things. again, maybe it doesn't take 12 months, maybe it takes whatever, you could throw in something else. But if you read less and focused more on implementation, it would probably be better for your business and you as a CEO.
Yeah, because that you got to wonder sometimes when you come in with, with all these fresh new ideas, when you come back from reading that course or taking that, that Tony Robbins thing or whatever, next thing you know, your staff is feeling whipsawed that, because you're coming in and you're changing everything up. Sometimes I think you got to stick with your knitting.
Yeah.
So to speak.
Yeah.
Next concept, you must do less in general. As a business owner, you should be doing less.
Yes.
And the problem that happens to all of us is because you can do everything, that doesn't mean you should do everything.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You remember back in the day, Nathan, you could do it all. You could document, you could treat, you could clean the bathroom, you could
schedule,
write a policy, you could do that schedule, you could, da-da-da-da-da. And what happens is all you're doing is you're diluting your focus. And the best thing that you can do for everybody is to do less and do those fewer things better.
Mm.
Very, very hard lesson to learn.
Totally agree. What your team members want from you is they want leadership and guidance, right? They don't want you to come in and clean the bathrooms. They don't want you to come in and treat patients. Even though you might feel like you're not pulling your weight, that's not true at all. What they want is leadership. And what does that look like? Well, it means implementing sound policy and procedure and structure. They might kick back, and the people who aren't aligned with your business will kick back against the implementation of structure and procedure. And they will self-select, and you'll get rid of them. And you'll find better people. But they want better people around them. They want someone to be the head of culture and generating a culture in their business. They want someone who's looking forward and saying, hey, we've got vacations coming up in 8 weeks. What are we going to do so that's not a hiccup to our business? Let's make this all smooth, right? They want someone who's going to recognize them when they do well, reward them when they do well. They also want someone who's going to hold them accountable when they are falling out of line. And whether they know it or not, they need someone to guide them and direct. And they want that, right? And so if we're doing less, we're doing more of those things that they actually want. That's the tough part is as PTs, we've spent how many years through schooling recognizing that I hammer this one nail and I get paid for it. I treat patients and I get paid. And even when you start your clinic and you're the lone therapist, I treat a patient and I get paid.
Yeah.
Well, now I'm coming in as a coach and telling you, stop treating patients and you'll get paid more. And you're like, hold on. I just spent the last 20 plus years of my schooling and education in my life to learn that I hammer this nail and I get paid. Now, what am I going to do? I'm not a therapist anymore. Well, that's what I've been working the past 20 years trying to do. So what am I then? And how do I have value? And where do I find my worth? And so that's their mindset shift that has to change for most owners to get to that point where they recognize that they're more valuable doing what the business needs and not treating patients.
That is excellent. And it is mindset. And sometimes when when you feel that you can't pull yourself out of clinical care, there's a mindset there. There's a reason that happens. And some of it is based in fear, to be honest with you.
Oh, totally.
Because people are wrapped up their identity into that, what they've been doing. But now they don't realize they have a higher calling and they can actually help more people if they would just train other people to be, that clinical.
Yeah. The fear is legitimate because part of it is, what am I going to do with my time now? Because they don't know. They don't know what to do. No one's taught them how to be an executive, an administrator, so, I'll pay my bills and I'll look at some numbers, but then what? But once they start recognizing how much the business wants them to work on it, then they start recognizing the plethora of things that they have to work on. And then it tips the scales and like, I've got too much to do. I need to start prioritizing. And so if there is a fear initially though, like if I have all that time, what am I going to do? How am I going to be valuable?
Right. And that goes from a mindset where you exchange your time for money versus when you exchange value for money. Right? So if you have a lot of value, it doesn't necessarily have to take time. In fact, time has nothing to do with it.
Right.
The value.
Yeah.
Right? That's amazing. Now, last point about how to be a better CEO. Use the WAIT method. WAIT. Why am I talking? That's what that stands for. Why am I talking? Right? Because as an owner, you walk into that room, you can take up all the oxygen. It's your way or the highway, and you can pretty much dictate how things go. Mm-hmm. And because you like to get things done, GSD, get stuff done. That's at least how I called it.
Yep.
You just go in a bull and china shop and you get it done. And what happens is you make everybody stop.
That's right.
You keep people from being their personal best and to bring a perspective that you need. So start every meeting, write the word WAIT down in front of you on a piece of paper. And that stands for why am I talking?
Yeah. I love it.
Little tip.
This conversation reminded me of a quote that I got from, I forget the guy's name, but he does something called Mind Your Business podcast.
Ooh.
But the quote he said was, when you value your time more than money, you'll have more of both. So
that's one to meditate on.
Going back to what you initially said is that you need to do less. Well, recognize that when you value your time more than money, you'll have more of both, because you're going to use your time wisely at that point, right? And so
it's finite.
Yeah, exactly. But the American mentality is work hard, work long, and it pays off. Whereas that's not the society we live in nowadays. It worked well up until a point, probably up until 2000 or so. But now in the information age, your value comes more from what you provide as a leader than it does as a worker.
Excellent. Now, with that said, let's get into the controversial part of the podcast. The future of orthopedic outpatient PT. Now, I just want to start a ground rule with what my dad told me, which is your most important function as a CEO and as an executive is to think. So these statements are designed to just make you think, right? A little bit controversial.
Okay.
I may believe this stuff, I may not, but it's designed to make you think.
Sure.
In general, we're steadily losing our edge in the marketplace as PTs. We are putting obstacles in our customers' way to use us by our own mindset and the way it's been done in the past. Well, guess what? Marketplace is different now. Now, the reality is that we all, as customers, as consumers, we all want a combination of good, fast, or cheap. Yeah. Right? As PTs, we should offer two of those unapologetically. Mm-hmm. There should be good and fast, good and cheap and fast. And if you want next level business smarts, offer your customers to pick what option they want. Right? If somebody walks into my office and they have an acutely sprained ankle, they want it fast. That's all they want. I got to get in now, right? Somebody calls in and says, oh, I want to be treated by Nathan and only Nathan. Well, Nathan's first appointment is 2 weeks from now, right? So they're choosing good over fast. Or someone who wants cheap. I don't want any out-of-pocket expense at all. Okay. Here's a list of exercises. See you later.
Yeah.
It's not going to be good and it's not going to be fast. But maybe you need to start thinking as a business owner of, can you offer people that choice and say, here's, you do it in a diplomatic way. You have to send the message correctly. But maybe we need to start thinking like that as physical therapists in delivering services, because we are losing market share. And not a lot of people say this in public, but I will. Why not? We're losing market share to pretty people on YouTube and pretty people on TikTok who look good in a bathing suit. I'm not one of them, because they're telling a better story than we are. Mm-hmm. They're telling a story better than we are as physical therapists. We don't even know how to tell our own story the right way. Mm-hmm. Right? And that is, what's your customer want? Yeah. Not being able to tell your story well is how a business dies. And we're starting to see that, I believe. And all the things that make people outraged when they see, hey, did you see that guy on YouTube who was telling me how to fix my back pain fast? And he wasn't even a PT. He didn't even have any medical background that I do. Well, guess what? He removed all obstacles to his customer, and he wins. Mm-hmm. You lose. Mm-hmm. Right? So we need to start thinking differently as PTs. You need to find out what your customer wants and give it to them. Mm-hmm. Right? And I'll tell you a funny story. Back in the day when I was treating people, and it would be at the end of the day, and you'd be treating, let's say, a teacher, and they were coming in for a bad neck or whatever. And she would say to me, oh my God, when you put me on that heat for my neck, that feels so good. I would pay you just to put that on. And after about, 20 years hearing that, it finally dawned on me, what if you did offer that to somebody?
Sure.
What if you said, you know what? You come in here, I'm going to put you on heat. I'm going to put you on here for 15 minutes. I'm going to close the lights off. You're going to lie here in a dark room. Your husband can't call you. Your kids can't talk to you. You can basically take a nap if you want it. And we thought that was the funniest, goofiest thing, until I put a name on it. And we started a napatorium. And people paid for it. No way. Now, you might say, you're crazy, you're unprofessional, you're cheapening this profession. But you know what? That's $15 or $20 cash, right? That we didn't have before. And that's how a business adapts and survives. Yeah. Or people who say, oh my gosh, when I'm done physical therapy, I just want to get stretched out. I love it when you stretch me out. Mm-hmm. We started a stretch and go program, where now we charge cash for people to get stretched out. And guess what? We've doubled that line of business since January.
Wow.
Because we put a funny name on it, but we gave people what they wanted, and we presented it in a very clear way. Mm-hmm. And I think that if physical therapists don't start thinking like that, because people really don't search for physical therapy. No. They search for, I want my back pain to go away. Who can help me make my back pain go away?
Yeah, no one wants to go to physical therapy, right?
I don't even know how to describe physical therapy, and I'm a physical therapist.
And they still mistake us with chiropractors and massage therapists after how many decades, right?
Right.
What's interesting to your point that came across my mind this week as I read the Impact magazine and recalled something that a mentor of ours said probably 6-8 years ago. He said, hey, you guys know, and this is a guy who owns a large medical practice, multiple practices. He's a chiropractor that owns large medical practices that include chiro and diagnostics, all the bells and whistles under one roof. Has done very well. In fact, even owns an insurance company. He said, hey, FYI, you guys know that, physical therapy, as you know, it's not going to exist in another couple decades, right? You guys know that, right? Like, what?
That's offensive.
Yeah. And so he said, it takes too long, right? To take that time out of someone's day. And you have to come too often. And people want it done quicker, faster, cheaper, right? Well, I thought he was silly, but I could see what he was saying. Well, then lo and behold, I read something in this month's Impact magazine and I think it's is it the July one that I just got in the mail? Did you just get it? It might have been, oh yeah, it's June Impact Magazine, June 21 Impact Magazine. And someone referred to telehealth and referenced, and I'm counting this to be truth, but current studies are showing that some of the tele-PT services are getting this similar results to physical services.
Mm-hmm.
Well, guess what? Why would insurance companies pay for someone to go to a clinic anymore?
Yeah.
If they just had a slew of physical therapists in a call center doing tele-PT, why bother, sending someone to a brick and mortar? So yeah.
That hurts your feelings, doesn't it, as a physical therapist?
Yeah. Well,
but honestly, the marketplace doesn't care.
It's going to go that way. And if we don't learn how to adapt and accommodate, it also had a great article about concierge PT, and, provide some concierge services. Blew my mind. I thought, why aren't we offering discharged patients a monthly subscription to have access to ask us a question 24/7 to our clinics? Say, pay us $20, $25, $50 a month, $100 a month. You'll get 24/7 physical therapy advice, consult.
That's right.
You can call about your sprained ankle. You don't have to come into the clinic. We'll FaceTime. You can call about your exercise equipment, or, hey, this flared up. What exercise should I do? And if it goes beyond that, then you say, well, now I need you to come into the clinic, or let's set up a telehealth evaluation and bill their insurance. But outside of that, just have that accessibility. And so those concepts came to my mind as I read the magazine this week, and I thought, oh, maybe my mentor did have something there.
That is kind of mind blowing. For example, I'm assuming, even though, I'm assuming that you go to the dentist,
mm-hmm.
right, for regular checkups twice a year.
Yeah.
And why do you do that, Nathan?
Because I know in doing so, I'll get the most out of my teeth as long as I.
You don't want your teeth to fall out.
Right.
Why don't physical therapists give twice a year checkups for the musculoskeletal system and charge people $200 to do that?
Yeah.
Right now, not everybody cares about that, but that's okay. You don't have to have everybody. You just have that segment that values what you're offering. At my age, I will definitely value that. If you can look me over twice a year and tell me the things that I need to work on because my right shoulder and internal rotation is getting tight, or my left gluteus medius is weak, and you're going to give me a specific exercise, oh heck yeah, I'm going to pay you $200 for that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's something that we should be thinking of.
Sure.
And in addition, cash-based services.
Yeah.
There is nothing wrong with that, Nathan.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was drilled into my head that as a PT, you do not make recommendations on equipment. You do not sell equipment. You do not sell anything for cash. It's all through insurance, right? And honest to goodness, that is like walking into McDonald's and buying a hamburger and them refusing to sell you the French fries.
Yeah.
Right? That's like going out and they go, I'm going to take a Big Mac, and they're going to go, well, you know what? You can get French fries, but why don't you go down the street to get those because they're a little bit cheaper.
Yeah.
You're like, what?
Huh?
That's what we do as physical therapists all the time.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, shouldn't I know what the best pillow is for your neck?
Yeah.
Shouldn't I know what bed is good for your back?
Sure.
Versus the My Pillow guy?
Mm-hmm.
Just saying. So we're going to get out of control if we keep going. But let's finish this with a couple good books that I think are good.
Uh-huh.
Are you ready?
I want to know.
Who, Not How.
Oh my gosh.
By Dan Sullivan and Benjamin Hardy.
Most influential book I've read in years.
Really?
Oh yeah.
I agree with you.
Where's my impact filter?
Oh my gosh.
I have shared that book. I've never shared books before. I've shared at least 15 copies of that book.
Holy cow. You see how this is going well? And you were nervous. So that book is super, super good because it really changes your mindset, I think, Nathan, from
totally.
thinking not how am I going to do it, but who am I going to get to do this, right? Because you don't do your taxes, do you, Nathan?
Nope.
Get your accountant to do it because they're better at that than you. Yeah. You're paying him for a result, and that's not going to jail, right? And so that's what you're paying for.
That's right.
So that's the book in a nutshell. But boy, you should read it. Everybody should read it, I think.
I've been meaning. I've even thought about doing a whole podcast about it.
I think you should. I think that's excellent.
That's great.
The other one that I like lately is Business Made Simple.
Read that
by Donald Miller.
Not bad.
Now you might say to yourself, well, geez, you've been in business for 30 years. What the heck are you reading a book called Business Made Simple? And really, even after 30 years, you should be open to learning some things. Definitely. And the thing that I love about Business Made Simple is another book, Building a Story Brand.
Yes, love building a story brand.
Is making your customer the hero of the story, not you.
Yes.
Right? You're the guy.
Yep.
And now there's a separate podcast.
Totally.
But that book really puts your thinking upside down, and you look at all your marketing a different way after you read that, and you understand the concept of how customers respond to that message.
Yep, definitely. Yeah, I love both of those books. The one I'm really excited about right now is called Effortless by Greg McKeown. He had a bestseller called Essentialism a few years ago. And then I heard him on Tim Ferriss's podcast a couple months ago. Great book, great ideas. He's not going to give you a lot of nuts and bolts like who, not how, right? But loved Effortless and the importance of finding those things that are easier for you and letting go of some of the other things. Well, for example, what I should say is starting from ground zero and building up instead of saying, hey, look at this complex issue. How can we simplify it? Start with what is the minimum viable product we've got to achieve, and how do we get from point A to point B with the least amount of steps?
Yeah.
Essentially. I mean, that's Effortless in a nutshell, right?
Nathan, I think it's a really great non-trivial exercise when you recommend a book to be able to synthesize the major points, because it really forces you to distill out of that. You know, what was it about that book? That's a great exercise for somebody to do, is to say, why am I recommending this book, Effortless? What's so good about it? And trying to verbalize that.
Yeah. And it solidifies that in your head, right?
Well,
yeah.
Great. And I hope that you weren't uncomfortable in this podcast. Oh. I think you did very well.
Yeah, not uncomfortable at all, man. Yeah, it's always great having you on. You're always going to throw me for a curve somehow.
Seriously, you had no idea what I was going to talk about, and that was real, authentic interaction, and that's super valuable. As someone who really values their time, that's why you listen to a podcast like yours,
right?
Because you know it's going to be authentic, and you're going to get genuine value out of it. So.
The last question I have for you is,
oh boy,
how do I title this episode? You left me in a lurch, man. We covered a ton of stuff.
You'll come up with something.
Oh yeah. Okay. Come on. All right.
Don't miss this episode, no matter what.
There you go. Yeah.
Now, I hope this discussion spurred some thoughts in your listeners, and they will reach out to you either on your Facebook page or via email, and just start a dialogue. That's what we as PT owners need more of, and that is some cutting edge thought to open up our minds.
Yeah. I always love it when listeners email me, simple questions, business questions, and maybe we hop on a call if necessary via email. I love seeing the interactions that people have had on the Facebook group, people coming from different backgrounds, but also with different questions that aren't necessarily for me. Just like, hey guys, what do you do about this? And to see other people in the group respond to them, that gives me some fulfillment. That's awesome.
Absolutely. You're definitely doing what you should be doing.
Yeah, I like that.
This is your ministry.
That's right. Well, cool. Steven, thanks so much for your time. If people wanted to like make you part of their network, how would they do that? Are you willing to share your contact info?
Sure. You could probably they could search me on LinkedIn. They could
Cool.
email me directly. I'm one of those crazy Italians, so I have a long last name. It's S Rapposelli at pptandfitness.com. I'm hoping nobody wrote that down correctly. But if they do, they can reach me that way. And just always happy to help anybody. I got nothing to sell, but hoping we can move the profession forward. That's what it's all about.
Well, thanks for your time, man. I appreciate you taking the time today.
Always a better man after I speak to you, Nathan.
Thanks, Steve.
Peace.